The Michael Jackson biopic is dividing everyone, masterpiece or disaster. The Michael Jackson biopic is dividing everyone, $800 million masterpiece, or the worst music biopic ever. Hollywood loves a success story. And on paper, Michael should be one of the biggest success stories of the decade. The film has reportedly crossed more than $800 million worldwide, making it one of the highest-grossing music biopics ever released. Audiences packed theaters. Social media exploded with reaction videos. Michael Jackson's music returned to streaming charts. And Jaafar Jackson, a complete newcomer to leading man status, suddenly became one of the most talked-about actors in Hollywood. Yet something unusual happened along the way. The bigger the film became, the more divided the conversation became. To some viewers, Michael is a stunning cinematic achievement, a heartfelt tribute to one of the greatest entertainers who ever lived. To others, it's a deeply flawed film that sanitizes history, avoids difficult questions, and sacrifices truth for spectacle. So who's right? Is Michael a masterpiece? Or is it one of the most controversial biopics Hollywood has ever made? Tonight, we're looking at both sides of the debate. And by the end, you can decide for yourself. Part 1. The case for Michael. Let's start with the argument made by fans. Because regardless of what critics say, audiences clearly embrace this movie. The box office numbers alone tell an extraordinary story. Music biopics have become one of Hollywood's safest genres in recent years. Films about famous musicians routinely attract large audiences. But Michael entered a completely different category. This wasn't merely a story about a successful singer. This was Michael Jackson, the king of pop, the creator of Thriller, the artist behind Billie Jean, Beat It, Bad, Smooth Criminal, Black or White, and countless other global hits. The challenge was enormous, and many fans believe the filmmakers succeeded. Jaafar Jackson's performance. The strongest praise centers around one person, Jaafar Jackson. Before Michael, most moviegoers had never heard of him. Despite being Michael Jackson's nephew, he was largely unknown outside Jackson family circles. Then audiences saw the first trailer, and many couldn't believe what they were watching. The resemblance felt uncanny, not just physically. The body language, the facial expressions, the voice, the posture, the movements, everything felt strangely familiar. When the movie arrived, many viewers walked away saying the same thing. They stopped seeing Jaafar. They started seeing Michael. That transformation became the film's biggest strength. Even many critics who disliked the movie itself acknowledged the commitment behind the performance. For a first-time lead actor, carrying a giant studio production is difficult enough. Carrying a movie about Michael Jackson is something else entirely. Millions of people already knew exactly how Michael moved, exactly how he sounded, exactly how he performed. Every detail would be scrutinized. Yet Jaafar somehow met expectations that many believed were impossible. The Billie Jean challenge. One sequence in particular became a defining moment. The recreation of Michael Jackson's legendary Motown 25 performance. The performance where the world first saw the moonwalk. According to Jaafar himself, recreating that moment became the most difficult part of the entire production. In interviews promoting the film, he explained that the scene required near frame-by-frame accuracy. Every spin, every gesture, every movement, every pause, everything had to match. But technical accuracy wasn't enough. He also had to capture the feeling, the electricity, the mystery, the confidence, the charisma, the energy that made millions of people fall in love with Michael Jackson in the first place. Jaafar described the process as mentally and physically exhausting. Months of preparation, endless rehearsals, repeated takes, constant pressure, because everyone involved understood something important. If they failed to recreate Billie Jean, the movie itself might fail. For many fans, they succeeded. And that sequence alone became worth the price of admission. The music still works. Another reason audiences embrace the film is simple. Michael Jackson's music remains incredibly powerful. Decades after its release, songs like Billie Jean, Beat It, Thriller, and Man in the Mirror still connect with new generations. The movie reminded people why. The concert sequences became major highlights. The recreation of famous performances generated applause inside theaters. Some viewers compared the experience to attending a Michael Jackson concert that they never had the chance to see in real life. For longtime fans, it felt nostalgic. For younger audiences, it felt revelatory. And that emotional connection helped drive repeat viewings. The emotional payoff. Supporters of the film also argue that critics underestimate the emotional impact. Many viewers weren't looking for a courtroom drama. They weren't looking for investigative journalism. They wanted a story about Michael Jackson, the performer. Michael Jackson, the artist. Michael Jackson, the cultural phenomenon. From that perspective, the movie delivered exactly what audiences wanted. The rise from Gary, Indiana. The Jackson 5 years. The breakthrough success. The creation of Thriller. The global superstardom. The moonwalk. The concerts. The music. The legend. Fans argue that the film captures why Michael Jackson became one of the most influential entertainers in history. And for them, that emotional journey matters more than anything else. Part 2. The Critic's Case. Now, let's look at the other side. Because the criticism wasn't minor. Some reviews were surprisingly harsh. In fact, several critics described the film as deeply frustrating. Not because of Jaafar's performance, but because of the screenplay. The sanitized story problem. The most common criticism centered on what the film leaves out. Michael Jackson's life was extraordinary, but it was also complicated. Very complicated. The later decades of his life included controversies, lawsuits, allegations, public scrutiny, addiction struggles, and intense media attention. Many critics argue that the film largely avoids those subjects. Instead, it focuses heavily on the rise, the triumphs, the accomplishments, the successes. Critics claim this creates an incomplete portrait. In their view, the film presents Michael Jackson as a simplified figure rather than a fully explored human being. The result, they argue, feels less like a biography and more like a celebration. For viewers hoping for a comprehensive examination of Michael Jackson's life, that became a major disappointment. Fact versus film. Another criticism involves historical accuracy. Like many biopics, Michael compresses timelines, combines events, rearranges details, creates dramatic moments. That's normal for Hollywood. But some critics argue that the movie goes too far. Several historical events appear altered or simplified. Some key figures receive less attention than they played in reality. Certain creative achievements become streamlined for narrative purposes. For example, Michael's earlier solo albums receive less attention. The Jackson family dynamics are simplified. Industry relationships are condensed. Some important career developments are restructured chronologically. None of these decisions are unusual in Hollywood. But together, critics argue, they create a version of Michael Jackson that prioritizes mythology over complexity. The missing second half. Perhaps the biggest complaint is where the movie ends. The film concludes around the late 1980s, which means huge portions of Michael Jackson's life remain untouched. The Dangerous Era, the History Era, Neverland Ranch, global humanitarian efforts, public controversies, the 1990s, the 2000s, the trial years, the final chapter of his life. Critics argue that ending the story before these events feels incomplete. Supporters counter that the filmmakers were always planning multiple films. Which brings us to perhaps the most important development of all. The sequel changes the conversation. Lionsgate has already confirmed a sequel is actively in development. And according to studio executives, approximately 25% to 30% may already be filmed. That's significant, because many criticisms of the first movie stem from what it doesn't cover. The sequel could potentially address that. It has the opportunity to explore. The Dangerous Era Neverland Ranch global tours humanitarian work career challenges public controversies later musical achievements. In other words, the chapters critics believe are missing. Whether the sequel actually tackles those subjects remains to be seen. But the opportunity exists. And that could ultimately reshape how audiences view the first film. The other story, Jaafar Jackson's future. While everyone debates the movie itself, another fascinating question has emerged. What happens to Jaafar Jackson now? The success of Michael changed his life overnight. Before the film, he was largely unknown. Today, he is associated with one of the biggest movies of the decade. But Hollywood history contains a warning. Many actors become trapped by iconic roles. Some never escape them. For Jaafar, the challenge may be even harder. Because he didn't portray a fictional character. He portrayed Michael Jackson, one of the most recognizable human beings who ever lived. Every future role will face comparison. Can audiences see him as someone else? Can casting directors imagine him beyond Michael? Can he build an independent career? The answer may determine the next decade of his life. What Hollywood is watching. Industry insiders often say a second role tells you more about an actor than a first role. The first role may be perfect casting. The second role proves range. That's why Hollywood is paying close attention. No major post-Michael project has been officially announced yet, but industry rumors suggest significant interest. Studios love momentum, and very few newcomers have generated as much attention as Jaafar Jackson. If he chooses wisely, he could become a genuine leading man. If not, he risks becoming permanently associated with a single performance. The verdict. So where do I land? I think both sides have valid arguments. The critics are right that the film avoids some of the most difficult parts of Michael Jackson's life. The screenplay often chooses celebration over examination, and viewers looking for a complete portrait may leave disappointed. But fans are also right. Jaafar Jackson delivers an extraordinary breakthrough performance. The musical sequences are powerful. The emotional connection is undeniable. And the film succeeds at reminding audiences why Michael Jackson became a global cultural phenomenon. Does Michael tell the whole story? No. Not even close. But does it capture the scale, energy, talent, and impact that made Michael Jackson one of the most influential entertainers in history? For many viewers, absolutely. That is why the movie continues dividing audiences. One side sees what was omitted. The other sees what was achieved. And perhaps that's fitting, because Michael Jackson himself remains one of the most debated figures in modern entertainment. The film didn't end that debate. It reignited it. And with a sequel already on the way, the biggest chapter of this story may still be ahead of us.